Okay, well, it's officially 10:30, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Dubé with Tetra Tech. I'm the moderator for this session. And we are going to hear from Richard Heineman, who is with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, about outfall inspection, mapping, and BMP maintenance. Just a quick reminder for folks, if you have questions for Richard about his presentation, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will save time at the end of the presentation to make sure we get to all the questions. And just another reminder that Richard is here volunteering his time, and what he's sharing today is based on his experience and expertise and not necessarily endorsed by EPA or DEP or anybody like that. So he's just here to share with us his experience. And with that, I'm going to get rid of my barking dog and turn it over to Richard. Thanks, Richard.
Yep. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Like Kelly said, my name is Richard Heineman. I work in PENNDOT Central Office. So I'll just give a little background. I'm responsible for the department's statewide MS4 permit, so that falls under my purview. Post-construction stormwater management falls under my purview. Construction stormwater inspections program falls under my purview, and any stormwater issues along our roadway that sometimes our districts or county need some additional assistance. So basically anything that has stormwater in its name or MS4 comes to me. So that's just kind of my brief background and my responsibilities. So today I'm going to focus a little more on the stormwater control measures and asset management of that. But like I said earlier, if there's any other questions about outfalls, MS4, I can answer any of those questions. But if you have any of those questions, like Kelly said, put them in the chat. I'll make sure we have enough time at the end, kind of go through those discussions. So this is just kind of we always like to kind of give this slide PENDOT by the numbers, we call it. So, as a department, we have 40-some thousand miles of roadway, 25,000 bridges. We have a lot of areas that I don't really get involved with, but 3 ports. We have lots of bicycle routes. We have lots of vehicles that get registered. So this just kind of like shows the PENDOT as a whole by the numbers. So I'm briefly going to touch on where we're at currently with PENDOT with our MS4 permit status. So our current permit was to expire in July of 2016. We're currently working under an administrative extension under that and working with DEP to get our new permit. But like everyone else, it covers discharges and storm conveyance systems. It covers our highways, rest areas, and stockpiles and garages. And like I said, we've submitted our permit renewal. We've had lots of meetings with DEP. It's gone out to public comment. We've addressed some of those comments. So we're working through that. We're kind of at the home stretch, hopefully, to get our new permit here. So in our MS4 permit area, we have you saw on the first slide, we had 40,000 miles road statewide. About 17,000 miles of those roads are in a 2010 U.S. Census urbanized area. We have over 10,000 plus outfalls that we're responsible for. If we're looking at a PRP aspect, we have about 40,000 acres of roadway surface area. And I know earlier we talked about 3,000 plus. Right now we're at like 2,600. Sometimes we round up 3,000, but for stormwater control measures, that's what we're responsible that we own, maintain, and operate. So because we have a lot of different SCMs and they were built over multiple years, before I kind of came in this position, we didn't really have one set guidance document. Our districts weren't quite sure how to maintain different types of SCMs. So we developed our publication 888. That contains all our procedures relating to SCM maintenance. So it includes anything to how to update and maintain our inventory database, how we inspect the SCMs, how we document those findings, how we prevent those SCM failures. and measures that should be taken to correct the issues. And also, it's a little specific to us, but how we're charging that work, how we're scheduling that work. So then we can kind of look at trends as we go through. So as you can see on the slide, it is on our PENNDOT's. If you go to forms and pubs, the link's here. It's a little hard to find sometimes. So what I always tell people, it's better to filter by publication and scroll down to it. If you use the search, because the department decided to use a nice Google search feature, if you don't get enough hits on it, it doesn't always pop up to the top. So I kind of tell people that's the best way to look for that. But it is available to the public. It's out there. Anyone can take a look at that. And it is a very in-depth document. So before we kind of develop that, I'm going to take a couple steps back. Before we developed Pub 888, a couple of years ago, BOMO, where I work, Beer Maintenance Operations Central Office, we decided to create a centralized database of SCMs. Before it was kind of, the districts kept track of it. They had paper plans, they had some scan plans. So we kind of took this task in 2015 to compile all this data. It was challenging, say the least, because the plans had a lot of different looks to them. It was hard finding certain information. It was it was very difficult, I guess, is to go back and look for all our historical SCMs. So we looked over at 500 plus projects, and we manually pulled all that information from those paper plans. So based on that, we create our SCM inventory. So that is our department-owned SCMs. Sometimes we have other SCMs in there that aren't department-owned. They might be along the roadway. We have a category in there that says owned by others. That helps us in the future know who owns what. We do track 40 plus fields in our SCM inventory. So our current process is even with new projects, as our districts find these SCMs, or if they're doing new projects, they send them in to me and my staff. We review all SCMs before they're added into the inventory to make sure they're the right type, they're not missing anything. And then we assigned SCM ID. And we store all our as-built plans on our network folder, the ones that we can find. And that's all part of that inventorying part. And like I said earlier, this whole process is mapped out in our publication 888. So this is just kind of the highlights of it. So like I said, our inventory is 40 plus fields. The main ones though, I mentioned about the SCM ID. We have a unique 10-digit code. The code we decide to use is we have a unique county number. So it's a county, a 3-letter code on the type, and then we just do sequential numbers as we add them into the inventory. Some of the other ones, key ones we need to know, we want lat long, what district it's in. We'll talk about where it drains to. Like I said, there's a lot of different fields, and that's all laid out in our publication. So as you can see here, and this is as current of February 21. And I kind of laid out by the districts here. You can see we have some of our engineering districts, anywhere from 40 to, District 6 has over 546. So it really depends on what type of program they have, whether they're doing NPDS permits or they have to build SCMs. And that just kind of shows you it's fast across the state. So as part of our inventory, we not only keep track of that, but we have a system called Maintenance IQ. It's our web-based GIS application. So we use it for planning and tracking PENNDOT maintenance activities across the state. So you can see here, this is just a screenshot from that with all the SCM locations. But without going into too much detail, any one of those green dots you see on the screen, you can click on it. It pulls up all the inventory information, when it was inspected last, any maintenance items tied to that. If there's any photos associated to that, it links those photos to that STM ID. But you can see here, we decided to go more of a GIS route for people to look at our inventory. You can also pull spreadsheets and data from this maintenance IQ and export it if people need to look at it that way. I kind of went over this already, but like I said, Maintenance IQ is our custom GIS. It helps us plan inspections. We can view that inventory. Like I said, when you click on one of those dots, this kind of pops up, all that information. It'll talk about the municipal ID, district, the SCM type, when it was built, the closest SR it's related to. So like in any good, like Liz was mentioned earlier, any good asset management system, you have your inventory, then you kind of need to go and do your inspections to see what your condition is, and then you got to plan that work, and then to kind of start all over again. So I talked about the inventorying part of that. I'm going to roll into how the department does SCM inspections. We have two different type SCM inspections. Ones we call VSI, so visual site inspections. I typically tell people these are like our triage type inspections. They're routine. Typically, it's an hour on site. You don't really need to look at the as-built plans. You're really just going out there to look to see if that SCM is performing. There's no big issues. These VSIs for the department are on a 3-year cycle for most SCM types. Some SCMs, if they have high issues with high sediment or they were designed where they need more frequent inspections, they may have a lesser frequency. For department staff and consultant staffs, anyone that's going to be doing these inspections, we offer a 1.5 day long training just for the visual site inspections. And we require those folks to take that course before they go out and do inspections for the department. And like I said, these are on a 3-year cycle. That our maintenance IQ I mentioned earlier, we have a specific map that kind of shows which SCMs are coming up in the next 6 months that are due for inspection to help our district folks to see that. So like I mentioned, or on the slide before, we have two different forms. We have a form that's called M77. This is also available out on our website in Forms and Pubs on PENNDOT's website. So it's available to anyone to look at. I kind of had to break it up here just for screen so people could read it. So when our inspectors go out, they fill out the date, the code, the SCM ID, when they were out there. Is there any photos? We kind of lump our visual site inspections into different categories. These categories, later on, I'll talk about it, based on the inspections, tie right to a maintenance table in our pub. So someone could look at it and say, all right, category 1, debris trash. If it's in the inflow area and there's a problem, what do I need to do to fix it? So it kind of, our SCM inspections tied to that maintenance work. But you can see here, if you're looking out for debris trash, for example, where is it? What type is it? Is it anti-skid material accumulation? Is it on side slopes? Is it somewhere else? We see a lot of erosion as well. So that's kind of category 2. Rolling into category 3, we see a lot of issues with ponding. So we're looking for that standing water, any other signs of poor drainage, and then we're making people fill out, describe that. The other big part we see as well is vegetation control. We see any issues with vegetation, woody vegetation, embankments, any vegetation impeding that access to the SCM. And then lastly, we kind of have that miscellaneous where, is there evidence of animals, any structural damage? Is the temporary ES&P erosion measures haven't been removed? That type of work. And when I talked about earlier, we have different action codes. 0 would be no action. The way up to a number 5. A 5 would be is the inspector is not sure what's going on. They need an engineer to come out or environmental person come out and do an evaluation. A forward being an emergency, we need to get out there to fix that right away. Like we might be losing an embankment, there's a large sinkhole, that type of stuff. And then anywhere in between from a 6-month response to a 4-week response. So I mentioned about the visual site inspections. That's kind of the triage. Our condition assessments, our condition assessment inspection, they're more in depth. So that's 2 to 4 hours on site. We require some type of environmental professional to do those. You're really going out there and looking at accuracy of the as-built. We document that with a couple different other forms. Our frequency for these, we require one of these to be done 1 year after construction, and then every 10 years. This also has a training course. In addition to the VSI, it's a day and a half. So for folks to take the condition assessment training, we require them to have the visual site inspection first. So if you're going to take both trainings, we're looking at a 3-day training to be certified to conduct inspections for the department. So this kind of, for the most part, this is assuming we're doing an inspection 1 year after construction condition assessment. You can see this kind of a timeline. Some SCMs we found need some additional inspections, like startup inspections, we call them. You can see them year 2 and 3. But if you do a condition assessment year 1, a visual site would be year 4, another visual would be year 7, and then it'd be a condition assessment, and then it would start all over again. So some of our SCM types you can see on the slide here. Based on the type, you can see here if you're doing a basin, and these are all our different codes, and they're shown in Pub 88 and they're described. You can see here CAI, VSI is required, and we actually put in here if it's only a spring fall inspection, when they should be out there. We have some that don't require as much inspections, like a riparian buffer. We require a startup phase, but once they're established, they're not on a typical schedule. So it kind of depends on the type of STMs on that frequency. But in most part, they're required at CII every 10, VSI every 3. So one of the things, though, we found too is you can't just do inspections and not look at what's going on. So we kind of we looked back over 650 different inspections, anywhere from basins to manufactured treatment devices. And we kind of did a mini research project, I would say, for the department. So as part of these inspection results, so of the 650, over 200,000, we identified problems. Multiple problems can be noted for each and given SCMs. So you can see here in this first column, that's kind of the total number of problems by problem category. So it's tied to their inspection results. So you can see here, we're seeing a lot of issues, debris and trash, a lot of vegetation issues kind of remain. The next one kind of talks about that corrective maintenance. So if it's action code 2 through 4, whether they need to get out there within, 4 months or 6 months to 4 weeks, you can see how the severity. And then we see a lot of engineering evaluations based on, like if there's a ponding issue, that takes a little more investigation, and what we're seeing out there. So, but 55%, you can see here on the slide, requires some type of corrective maintenance or some engineering evaluation. So I'll be the first one to say some of our SCMs in the department, they all need some work because they are kind of a living, breathing asset. They're not just concrete. You can't set it and forget it type deal. Well, where it does take long for vegetation to grow in the state of Pennsylvania. So kind of our most common problems you can see here, we kind of dove a little deeper. So debris and trash, we see a lot of those issues in the inflow channels. Erosion we see in the bottom and side slopes. We see a lot in the ponding issue, more standing water. We see a lot of hydrophytic vegetation as a vegetation issue. Um, and then a lot of sediment buildup for that miscellaneous. And then if we went on to the second most common for vegetation, we see a lot of trees growing up in there. A lot of trash on the floor surface, but you kind of see that in this chart. So these kind of just some of the inspection results, and we kind of add to this. In basins, typically, every problem category is represented, and the most requested is for standing water in a dry basin. So our basins aren't infiltrating like they were designed to. We see a lot of standing water. In bioretention, we see a lot more localized erosion and sediment debris accumulation. Infiltration basins, most common problem is poor infiltration. Swales, a lot of times they got changed intended flow pattern, and we have missing components. So, where there might be check dams, they're not there anymore and they've been removed. So based on those inspection results, as a department, we kind of look at SCM maintenance two different ways, right? So we have a routine preventive maintenance. So that's a regular cycle. That would be the best example I can give is mowing our basins, make sure they're on that cycle. Those correctives are more identified through an inspection, or if we're out there doing preventive maintenance, we might see that. And those corrective maintenance activities, we show those all in Appendix E in our publication 88. It's a lot of tables. I'll show a screenshot here later on of those. But those are the kind of the bigger ones. That's how we categorize it. So to help out with some of the routine maintenance, we in the pub, you'll see this graphic. I took it from there. It's kind of consumer report type of or graphic, for basins, for routine maintenance. We're looking at for basins for grass maintenance, semi-annual or vegetation management annual. And you kind of go through all the different type of SCMs where, a manufactured treatment device, they don't have grass maintenance, obviously, or vegetation management, but, litter control, some of those require that monthly. And some of those sediment removal might be semi-annual. So it all depends on the type of SCM, but this is kind of our table 4.2.1 in our Pub 88. So it's a quick cheat sheet guide. So I mentioned earlier, we have different tables in Appendix E. I'll go down through here. So we have just a general table that applies to all different SCM types. And then we kind of go into, like, you can see table like 1.3 that covers all of our basins, so most types. You can see them listed there. And we go the whole way through here, and you can see we have manufactured treatment devices, level spreader outfalls, pervious pavement, and we have a different table for each one of those SCMs. I know this might be a little hard to read, but these corrective maintenance tables, this is what it would look like. So we would say if they're on the SCM component on this one, for example, on the top line, we see inflow outfall pipes. If there's an obstruction or blockage, this defect code falls from our inspection results and inspection action code. So if it's a 3 or higher, so we even tell our maintenance forces maintenance is needed when, water doesn't flow in or out of the SCM. That's when you have to do maintenance. And then we talk about the recommended maintenance. And in words, we kind of say what you have to do. And for the department, we have an assembly number to track that. So we want them to use these specific codes to track that type of work. And this is, like I said, it's a pretty large part of our publication. So like I talked about before, in that table, we have SCM components, talk about defect or problem, and then that action code that aligns to the VSI form. I mentioned about before, maintenance needed when, kind of describes that circumstances, that component, where's that defect happening, that recommend maintenance activity to correct the problem, and then how we're tracking that in our system. So these next couple slides just kind of talks about some of the things we see a lot of more on the picture side. So, SCMAs, we have broken fences. We see a lot of sediment accumulation. When we talk about trash or debris build up on the outlet, we see these are pictures from our SCMs. Lots of woody vegetation and embankments here. A lot of side slope erosion. This is where a lot of our guys are working on outfall erosion. So I kind of throw this slide in here. We get a lot of questions on why we have to maintain these SCMs. I have crews tell us, we're here to plow snow or we're here to pave roads. And so try and change that culture. Basically, we have to. We have our MS4 permits. So those that fall in that urbanized area. Also, a lot of these SCMs are built per, 102 regs, which require a long-term O&M. It's good practice too, just in general for drainage off our roadways. And just driving home that regular maintenance now means less intensive maintenance cost of repairs later. So this is something we're just kind of wrapping up now and it'll be available to all our department folks and probably available out to the public as well. We realized that we developed this pub, we identified all these issues, we trained our inspectors, but we really didn't have a good training for our field folks how to do this maintenance. So we did a pilot a couple weeks ago, like I said. So we developed a training for that target audience for our field foremen, mid-level managers. We have lots of different modules on the different types. That modules can be interchangeable, flexible. So if someone wants to go back and look at just one area, they can. We also kind of developed an awareness training for those that might not be doing the work all the time, but it's that awareness when they're out there. Right now, those modules look like this. We kind of go over our program overview, how to identify SCMs when you're out in field, vegetation identification. We get a lot of questions on different types of maintenance equipment and what that means, what I can and can't use. Like I mentioned earlier, routine corrective maintenance activities, how to charge those, what's the right way to charge them. And then we have a module in there about how maintenance folks in the field can look at those design plans and what to look at. So that's all I have. I think I have about 10 minutes left for questions. So
You definitely do have 10 minutes left for questions. Folks, if you do have questions for Rich, please put them into the chat. I have a question on the training, Rich, while people put their questions in the chat. So you mentioned that this just wrapped up. When you say just wrapped up, are you talking about the development of it, or how many folks have gone through the maintenance training to date?
yes, so what we did is we asked for 2 volunteers for each one of our districts, and we did a pilot, I'd say 2 weeks ago. So we're addressing their comments, the folks in our district. Part of that training too has field guides, so we're wrapping up those field guides. So I'd say about 20 department staff has gone through that. And then once that kind of is available and tweaked, we'll probably put those field guides out on our website. And then if anyone's interested in the training or want to take a look at it that's developed, I share as much training as I have. So you can always reach out to me on my contact info and we can work something out. But yeah, about 20 or 30 folks, and we're working through those comments now. So.
Oh, that's great. So if folks heard that, like Rich's email is right there. So everyone email him about good training. Is that something that you'll do like in partnership with the MS4s that you're located in? Like, how do you think you would set that up for non-DOT folks?
Well, right now, it would be probably similar to the way we do our visual site inspections and condition assessments. So, we put those trainings out on training calendar, where anyone can attend. So we've had municipalities attend some of our inspection courses. It'll probably be similar to that. Or if an MS4 wants me to come out and give the training or web version of it, I have regional folks, we can give the training as well. The LTAP folks, are interested in this training as well. So it may be also that we give it to LTAP and then LTAP creates a course on it. So it might be offered through an LTAP program as well. So it'll be out there. So there's different options to give. So
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think we can never have enough training, and sometimes it's a matter of, costs as well as availability. So the fact that you're making that available is really great.
Mhm.
I don't see any questions in the chat. Either everyone's shy or you just covered everything
yeah,
completely.
I don't think so. Like I said, I don't know if they can unmute. If someone wants to unmute and talk, ask a question, I'm fine with that too, Kelly. That's up to you. But
All right, Rich just gave an invitation to jump in if anybody has any questions.
and
They
like I
would
said,
rather.
you can ask questions that are even outside of this as well. If anyone has MS4 questions, any questions at all for PENNDOT and stormwater.
Well, I have one that I was thinking about when you were talking about, the inspection reports and the different types. I mean, is it part of your job, Rich, to make sure that these inspection reports are, comprehensive and complete? Like when you did the review of these inspection reports, were you
Yeah,
finding variation in the way like different staff did their reports and how
we
thorough and they were?
we do. We actually have a QA program. So I mentioned we have regional folks. I have 3 different folks across state. So we do a percentage of those inspections, and they go out within a certain time after the district's done them, and we do our own inspection, do that comparison, and that's in the publication as well. Our kind of QA program for that. So at first we saw some differences, and then we kind of reached out to the districts, so like, hey, what's up with this? So but now that we've been doing it for a couple of years now, it's pretty consistent, especially after folks have taken the training. See, some of the folks were out doing inspections prior to taking the training because the program's just starting up. Um, and now that everyone's required to take that training, we see a lot more consistency.
Okay, that's really interesting to know. Yeah, I think not having an automated system where there's like pull downs or check boxes or whatnot, that you could probably get into just differences based on, reviewers' perspective and like you were saying, sort of the attitude of why do we have to do these things, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
So,
that's an interesting process. That's very transferable. Okay, we have a question. PENDOT addressing additional salting, et cetera, in vegetation due to increased snow and ice removal?
sorry, I'm just trying to figure out.
So I don't know, James, if the question, you can go on Mike if you want, but I think the question is, is PENDOT addressing the additional salting and vegetation due to increased snow and ice removal in terms of, it being a best practice?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm not in the winter section, so but the winter section does fall in my division. So as a department, we really try to limit the amount of salt. We try to apply that right amount of salt to make that roadway passable and safe for the public. So I will tell you that, and there's been other research projects about SCMs and more salt tolerant type SCM or vegetation. Um, right now, I guess best I can say is we're trying not to put any more salt out there than we have to because it's money out of our pocket. So we do a lot of different calibrations on our equipment. We have our AVL systems. We kind of track application rates and kind of take it more on the operator side. So I don't know if that answered the question.
James can let us know if he has a follow-up in there.
Or I
But
might have
that
missed the
doesn't,
question. So
no,
I don't know.
I think that's right. I mean, I think it's the idea of, if we're not careful with our salting and we're investing, time and money in building these SCMs that are definitely vegetation dependent, then we could be, undoing the good work that we're trying to do.
Yep.
James must have been happy with your answer because there is no follow-up. So I guess if nobody has any additional questions, we can use our chat and the emojis to show Rich some appreciation for his time today, being here and sharing with us all the good work that DOT is doing. So thanks for that. We appreciate your time today. And for folks that are planning to attend another session, we have them starting, I believe, our next ones are, or our next, we're going back to the plenary for 11:15, and then we're going to launch into case studies. So just a reminder for folks to go ahead and leave this session, go back to the plenary, and while you have a couple free minutes, feel free to, fill out that survey. Thanks again, Rich, for your time. That was a lot of great information.
All right. Yep. Thanks. And like I said, I'll leave my information up here till you kick me out in case someone needs to copy it. So.
There will be we don't kick people out. We let people linger. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you back in the plenary at 11:15.
All right. Thanks, everyone.